Rise up the starry plough in James Connolly's name. Rise up the starry plough for his glory and his fame. He joined the Transport Union so workers could be free. He fought for Irish freedom for the likes of you and me. James Connolly came from Scotland, a rebel to the core. He wanted not just freedom, but socialism and more. He said when we gain our freedom from England's cruel hands, we'll have to fight the bankers, we'll have to make a stand. So rise up the starry plough in James Connolly's name. Rise up the starry plough for his glory and his fame. He joined the Transport Union so workers could be free. He fought for Irish freedom for the likes of you and me. He held his line for liberty in the GPO. He held his line for freedom and he would not let it go. Well, the Brits, they bombarded them and they smashed them brick by brick. He held his line for freedom and a socialist republic. So rise up the starry plough in James Connolly's name. Rise up the starry plough for his glory and his fame. He joined the Transport Union so workers...
We're in Cork City today to interview Jim Lane.
Well, do you know now, there's one thing I'd like to say there, because I've been reading some books there in more recent times, and they bring back things to me. There's one book there, the IRA in 1956.
By Matt Tracy.
69, by Matt Tracy, yeah. Now, I gave him an interview, as did several other people at the time. It's not a bang-bang book, if I put it to you like that. It's got an awful lot to do with the politics of the times and who were influencing the movement and the different people involved, you know. There's just one error that I just want to clear up in it. When the hardcover came out some years ago, this came out now I think about 18 months ago. It was launched in Dublin. There was mention in the first hardcover edition that I was dismissed from the Republican movement, the IRA, in 1957. And I did pass that on to the author, and he was to get it fixed up in the paperback. But actually the paperback came out, and you know what publishers are like. They don't always come up with the right thing. They just left it as it was. But there is a mention in it that was just important to me. I did mention elsewhere, like that I, Brendan O'Neill and Charlie Ronan went up north on our own speed, like, you know. In fact, there was an earlier attempt to go up there, but we were unfortunately, I was about a couple of months before that, we were involved in an accident in Dublin. The car was blown away by some drunk coming home. We had to abandon that. Then we rejigged the grouping that was going up, and Brendan O'Neill and I and his brother Jim, we resigned from the movement. We had tired of asking them for active service. We were aware that people from other parts of the country were, but they were holding back from us conversations they had had with people on the top, indicating that the Cork crowd weren't going to send up people for active service anymore. Oh, they'd look after the buns, they'd get a few things and they'd pass them up the line and all the rest of it. And the Republican movement at the time kind of kept their mouth shut because it wouldn't have looked good. But we weren't aware, like, of an awful lot of what was going on in the background, so we resigned. I mentioned that to it because it says in the book that we were expelled in 1957 for having gone to Tyrone without permission of the Cork OC. Well, of course, we were in Tyrone in 1956 and early 57, and we were there as IRA volunteers. But when we came back, we wanted active service again, and we were refused. And we kept asking, and actually There were other volunteers as well wanted to go up. I was one or two, probably I'd had enough. I remember being approached by one fellow and he says to me, I heard yourself and O'Neill and a couple more if he wanted to go up again. I said, yes, all right. For Jesus' sake, he says, would you shut your mucking mouth? Because if you start off something, we'll all be sent up there again. You know, some of these fellows continued afterwards to be officers and leading the movement, you know. That was the thing. But we got fed up of it anyway, and we resigned. We resigned up on Sunday as well in the house of Jim Lane. Charlie Ronan came from Middleton, and he didn't have to resign there because even though it was part of the First Cork Brigade, the people down in all the officers and people in charge down in Middleton was totally supportive of the thing, the armed struggle. But you know, they couldn't do anything about it because they came within the orbit of the Cork number 1 Brigade and they just couldn't go. But Charlie went with us. Look, the guys below there, when he went home, he was back in again, but I was out, and then they put up notice in the paper in March 59 that we weren't members of the movement or something to that nature, naming us. And I just wanted to correct it. We weren't put out at that time. We resigned, right? I did come back into the movement when I came back from England. I was approached by Max Stefan and he brought me back in, excluding the army, which he was working on for me. But that never came to a head because of my involvement with the Swanton affair in organising the funeral. They ousted me out of everything. But there you are, just to put that straight. Another thing there that I wanted to mention as well was there's another book there. It is out about 20 years. It's a hardback cover. I'd say you can get it no trouble if you check up these, you know, these websites that you get these second-hand books. But it's written by a fella called W.L.R. Smith, and he calls it Fighting for Ireland, but it's subtitled The Military Strategy of the Irish Republican Movement. Now, he mentions the IRF, or An Phoblacht group. You know, we were known as the IRF, which developed after the Swanton affair in Cork, and it's also referred to as An Phoblacht. Now, the thing about it was that he mentioned a few people that he believed were involved in An Phoblacht because of the content of it. Now, the people involved in it, they were not. He mentioned Rory Brady. He mentioned Sean McStefan. He mentioned Rory's brother Sean. And he mentioned Dave O'Connor. Kind of so because they were from Cork and are living in Cork like Stevenson. But they were not involved. The people that were involved were primarily in Cork. I was involved and all names were known locally, like, you know. But it was that kind of an organisation that we weren't throwing names around, but some of us had to come up front because we had dealings with Republicans and we had our say in things. It's one other thing too, I mustn't forget. Oh my goodness. When I done that other interview, it was 18 months ago, I'd say no.
Part 1.
Yeah, part 1. And actually it carried into part 2 there's a listing of the names of volunteers who were involved in 1956, the opening of the campaign. And I made an error with one man's name. These things can happen, slip. Tyke Sullivan from Crossbarry. He's still alive, you know. I think he's 88. And he's as lively as you could get. He's into this judo stuff. You go into the room with him and he does all this kind of stuff, you know. Very fit for his age. By Jesus, he was fit then too. He used to train us out in Crossbarry. Great ground, great historic background to it. But I called him Ted Murphy. Ted O'Sullivan is his name. I told him I apologised to him, and I told him I said fix it up in the future. So Ted, I'm looking after you, boy. I just want to kind of reflect a little bit further, because today's discussion has more to do with publications and political publications, like, you know. And I want to just say to you that in the earliest involvement that I would have had in the Republican movement was with an organisation which had just been started, and I was brought in as editor. Sorry, I was brought in as treasurer. It was called Costa Foilchicán Náisiúnta, National Publications Committee. We were the crowd who put out the calendar, or the photographs. They went all over Ireland, of Sean South and Fergal O'Hanlon. Just to give a small bit of humour to the thing, the fellow that was running it at the time, when we came back from the north, he says to me, "Oh Jesus," he says, "I should have been told about this move up to the north." And I says to him, "Why?" "Oh," he says, "the OC should have told me." And I said, "Why?" "I'd have had you all photographed. Sure, you know all the trouble we're having with Sean South's foot. We couldn't get a good photograph of him. But I'd have had you all photographed." "What do you mean?" "Well, if any of you were killed." "Oh Jesus," says I to myself, "where do we go from here?" Anyway, none of us were killed. But the funny things. I was put out of that committee after a while. I got into it because I left school at 14 and I started going to night school, bookkeeping and commerce and stuff like that. And so when I got dug into the army and training and playing for the band and all the rest of it, I had to give up all that. I hadn't time for it, you know. We all have our priorities. So I got into this committee, and the army found out I was doing bookkeeping. They put me in as treasurer. And you know, as time went on, I found things wrong, and the person running the outfit completely we got shorty with one another over matters. And to cut a long story short, I was called in by staff, IRA staff. Actually, it was Mick McCarthy, an old friend of mine, a friend of my mother's too. And he says, "Jim, you're not getting on. We'll have to drop somebody." Is that so? Says I, "Mick." "Oh yes," he says. "Of course the funds now we're going to the army, like, you know, of the thing." So he said, yeah. And he says, what does it mean?" "Oh," he says, "you have to go." And I looked at him, I says, "Jesus, what have I done wrong?" I said, "He wanted me to keep an eye on the bobs, and I was doing it." And I said, "You know," I says, "about what's happening to some of the money." He turned around to me and he says, "You're gone." "Well, Mick," I says, hadn't you a great decision to come to? Huh? You had to choose between me, who was looking after your money, and the golden egg. You were quite happy what the golden egg was making for you. Some years afterwards, he moved out of the movement and made that business his own, and ended up in conflict with the Republican movement, and Goulding and everyone came in, and that Dublin shop, is it Walton's?
Oh, Walton's. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's right. Yeah, sorry.
It's in Goulding's father knew one of them, and they got together, and they admitted that they didn't go legal against this person because they thought they kind of had the word that the army were behind it for finance, and once Goulding made them aware that that was gone, they moved against them, and that kind of put an end to that. But that's just an aside thing. I got into that. That was my first touch into publications of any sort. The next thing that really dawned on me was, at the time when we were outside the movement, and it was after the death of Swanton, and an altercation took place below in the Thomas Ashe Hall when we raided the place, because they were trying to push us around. They stole a document belonged to us. And you know, that document, I think we had the name Phoblacht on it. It was a 2-sheet piece of paper, a quarter size. You know, that was a size less, smaller than the A4s. It was the 2 little sheets. Some of the buyers in the area came in and stole it out of a printing shop. And Liam Flavin, I remember, stopped Goulding. We were to have a meeting, and they cancelled the meeting. It actually came to the point we had 5 to go in, and they reduced it to 3. They'd only seen 3. And when it came to, could I be one of the 3? No. So I was out. But Liam Flavin, who used to write what they called, he used to write a little thick paper locally in Cork called The Worker. And he was very much into it. It was all based on working people. His idol, frankly, was Larkin. He was one of those guys who worked on the waste bins himself, like, you know. And he always felt like that he was on the side of the trodden man. And he used to write, they're often referred to as doggerels, little leaflets and things like that. But he was there that night, and he turned and he says to Stevenson, he says, tell us, why did you go in and take that? And the answer was, because nobody but the Republican movement have the right to make any comment on matters of republicanism. Liam clung to the ground nearly. I couldn't get over it either. I'm not saying Stevenson totally represented the movement, but he was an influential person in it. That was the kind of thinking at the time. Liam there, who had written documents, papers for the unemployed, which he was greatly involved in. He was a man who was in the Curragh in the 40s and done his time in there, a strong Republican, a Socialist Republican. He was shocked to hear that. And you know, when we were out then, we realised that by damn they weren't going to stop us writing. I'm referring to the Republican movement. And we saw a lot of things going wrong at the time. There was a whole move after the 56-62 campaign fell asunder, and there were people never came back, but then there were a lot of people, and they were being encouraged to get involved in parliamentary politics. Thus began the big argument for years and years. I suppose Rory Brady was the last man of it. well, I'm sure his followers would question that. But they held for abstentionism and they weren't interested in parliamentary politics. But there was a whole aura, there was a kind of a thing going through the movement at the time that was worrying a lot of us. Because our information was that the Republican movement was dumping its guns, holding on to something, given the pretense that they were involved in doing things and all the rest of it. But people like Jack McCabe was able to give me a pile of information as to what they were doing. They were fucking dumping it down the fields and down in Kildare and bloody everywhere. But, do you know, we got out, we came together following the Swanton thing, and we put together an organisation which was referred to as IRF, Irish Revolutionary Forces. We put out a paper. A lot of the people involved at the beginning were Republicans. Most of us, we'd say, were Socialist Republicans. But we also became aware that the trend that had got hold of some leadership in the movement were people from the CPG, or sorry, the CPI. Well, I got the names now at times because they all changed their names from one way or another. But they were the Moscow Line Communists. And we studied and we went against that position. And we got involved in, and I'm going to stick note to publications, we got involved in publishing An Phoblacht. There were 14 issues of it, and we made known our criticisms of the direction that the movement was going at the time. We had to make it from outside because we weren't within, but we were not going along with this, with the Stevenson business about we had no right to open our mouth. And that was the way things were back in those days.
And so you can get all these, the Phoblacht, aren't they all on the Cedar Lounge?
There's 14 of them there. They have the full set. They're there. And they've gone around the world in different places and they've been read. No, I'll admit, they were put together in 1965, 66, around that time. And they might, if you look at them and read them today, remember Ireland was in a different situation. Republicanism was in a different situation, and you have to weigh all that against it, and the world is in a different situation. But we do, in those documents, weigh up the cause and pros of the use of force and that in struggle. But we do go like as far as to be quite clear that if you don't have the subjective situation right and objectively out there, the forces that you oppose are massive against you. You don't go ahead into armed struggle. And God, look at it today. They're like an elephant on top of us. You know, you'd have to read it all in that kind of context. But An Phoblacht is a good read for anybody who wants to do any study on the 50s and the 60s and the development of the Republican movement. We later began to publish another paper called People's Voice. Now, People's Voice, with that went a name, Saor Éire. We'd been interested at the time in what had been said about, or we had read up on the Republican movement back in the 30s. Like the days of the Gilmores and the O'Donnells and all those people who were involved at that time.
Frank Ryan and people like that.
Yeah, Frank Ryan and all those people. And we came to some conclusions on it. Like, we thought that the earlier period of the 30s showed good direction, that at least they had policies. You knew what they were looking for. There was a great shortage of that, like in the 50s and 60s, or the 50s, and things like that. And we were criticising them, and they could take an awful lot of criticism from the right, but it stumped them when they were being attacked or criticised from the left, because we were all Socialist Republicans. We were all followers of Marx, Engels, Lenin, and Connolly and Mellows and all those kind of people, and that made it awkward. But that's what we went on about. All right to express our views, and it was a worthy fight. The People's Voice isn't. There's one copy of People's Voice in the lounge, I think, but I'm seeing to it that they do get those 6 of that. But that, sorry, just to tell you, like that, when Saor Éire was about, that was an attempt. It was sold in the pubs, and it was sold here, there and everywhere, and it was like going public. Irish Revolutionary Forces was a different kettle of fish. Names weren't used and things like that. There was a lot of secrecy attached to it and what have you. But that still existed even when the Saor Éire was there. And it went on for several years afterwards. It was there. But it was out of that we developed the feeling that voices had to be heard. And you know, there's no doubt about it. Like, when you're down in Cork, or you're down in Kerry, or down in the sticks, as they say, you need a voice. With all due respect to the people in Dublin, like, we need to make our voice known, because you almost were expected in those days, I dare say you probably do today too, you're kind of expected that if you want to really get involved in the movement, you should go to live in Dublin. Because a lot of us were quite happy in Cork. And we stay in Cork. I think I've elsewhere told about our involvement, Saor Eire's involvement in the period around 69. We were involved, we went at the earliest date up to Derry to help with the defence of Derry. I actually came down. I had to bring a man down out of it, and when after I brought him down, I was told that the IRA wanted to see me. I was out of them. We were bad. We hadn't been getting on, and I was asked. They were in fairly dire straits. They had been sent to look after Derry area, Donegal, around there. And lo and behold, the person who had a lot of information on that area of the country was myself. And they approached me. Would I go up and would I help out? And under the circumstances I did. And I was up there for a while with them in Derry. Following that then, I was at there was some period there then around that, I went over to England. To speak as evidence for Connor Lynch and Sullivan. And I said that I sent him over there. I sent him over there to do study. I had worked in Dagenham, and the fellow Sullivan had been kind of born. I think he was born in Dagenham, And he had an English accent kind of and all the rest of it. And I said, look, he'd be good men now to go down to Dagenham and pile of workers there. Bloody big industrial. There was 50,000 working there and when I was there. 50,000 was the biggest operation in Europe at the time. I'm talking now 59, 60, 61, around that period. Big operation. So I went into court and I said that there was that. For some reason they didn't believe me. But of course, nobody knew I was going over there. I was sent for the night before, and when I got in there, I didn't expect anyone who would know I was coming. But I had this talk with the solicitors on our side, Hostetler or something was their name. Was the practice, and I told them, just so Gordon, I went in and I made that statement. But you know, the solicitors came up with the one, but Mr. Lane, aren't you involved in a grouping in Cork connected with An Phoblacht and all this? And to hear him trying to pronounce An Phoblacht. But he went into all my background. And I looked at him and I said, listen, I'm sorry, I says, the branch in Cork were you're too much of a hurry, they sent you all the wrong information. I tell you, when I finished, I took the first plane out of the place. I didn't want them to make any more calls. We were up in Donegal then a short while afterwards. There was a commemoration going on there for there were 3 lads killed there around the 40s, around 38, 39, I'm not sure.
The
Reynolds
the Donegal border.
Yeah, and Dave O'Connell was there, and Dave asked us to go on a colour party. Well, we went all right, but we weren't. Brendan O'Neill was with me, and we said we'd go on the colour party, all right, but we weren't standing in a Saor Éire or anything. We just said we'd stand in, and we did. We stood in and things. I gathered at that meet up with Dave that Dave was busy organising opposition to the existing army at the time. We're talking now September 69. He was meeting people, and he again got back to me as he had when I was in Derry with him. He asked me to go into the IRA, to go back, and I said I wouldn't. I was involved in another organisation. I said, it's not that I'm thinking of going in, but even if I was, I said, common decency requires you to go back and tell the other crowd, I said, where you stand. But he had a go for me again above in that part of North Donegal, further up Donegal anyway, again at that time, and I told him the thing. It was just the same. So I kind of left it. The next meeting then I was at was a bit later in September in Lurgan, and it was organised by J.B. O'Hagan, Rory Brady was at it, Dave O'Connell was at it, and a lot. It was mainly people who were running the defence groups around the north, and I did mention at the last one, but it's really worth mentioning again, that at that meeting was a man, Kennedy, who had been in Cork and was arrested for trafficking arms in from America, and he got a few months. That was somewhat earlier. And Paddy Devlin, SDLP man, later, and Jim Sullivan, Goulding's man in Belfast, top down. And we discovered, they stood up and spoke and said they had to leave the meeting. They were on the way down to Dublin. They were to meet. We had been talking earlier about Craig, the minister in the north, how he was helping out his side, the Oranges, and they said, that was the way they put it, they kind of spoke almost as one, a little bit from each fella. They were definitely together on it. They were going down to see a man who had equal status in the south as Craig had in the north. They didn't mention the name, but the name went around. They went down to see Charlie High. Incidentally, I was reading another book about the Ire sometime afterwards that Golding wrote, and it appears he was running around around Dublin the same day, or around the north the same day, looking for all his men. Little did he know that Jim Sullivan was on his way down to meet High. Of course, I think Golding's brother met him too. And then when I heard all this old bullshit coming up about that the Provos, they were manufactured almost by the Fianna Fáil. By God, there was enough of people who went into the officials, and they were up to their eyes in working with and doing deals with Fianna Fáil people, inside in offices in Dublin as well, at that particular meeting. After that meeting in Durgan, we came down to Dublin to find that the evening paper, I think it was the Evening Herald, had made a thing in it that Saor Éire action group had attacked raided a pub, raided a bank.
Kells, County Meath.
Kells, County Meath. Pubs, they could do that too. But we had coincidentally gone through Dublin, met some of them the day before, and it must have been the whole idea like of having a chat with us, and we asked to meet him again the following day because we understood there were two Corkmen with him, and we wanted to have a chat with him, see how they were getting on, and we did meet him the next day. But that was after seeing the other thing the night before about Saor Action Group, because we had met with them several months before that in Cork. Well, I'm kind of going over that with you again because I know you've been publishing stuff in relation to Saor Éire and Saor Éire. The Cork and the Dublin crowd, the Dublin people were separate, different altogether. But how they came up with our name was obviously following the meeting that they had with us and proposed to us that we'd fuse. We'd be the one organisation called Saor Éire, and we refused because we didn't agree with their tactics. They were very much into Guevara and all that type of thing, and we were more into the business of starting wanting to form a party and all that. The party, as it went forward and got support, anything of the nature that they were proposing would never be considered until then, like, you know. But of course, like, they had their own attitude, the thing too, that can be discarded as well. They reckoned that they were doing it to get finance to buy arms for the campaign at the time. Different point of view, but that was the way we were. We were getting very fed up, and I remember we had been reading a lot of material at the time, some of us, that was being published by the Irish Communist Organisation, that's the ICO, and we were very impressed by the material that they had been publishing in relation to republicanism. They done stuff on Liam Meadows, and they done stuff on the Republican Congress, and they were doing a lot of stuff then on Connolly and press poisoners and several things like that. But it impressed us, and we were talking then further. We were really fed up at the time because the Republican movement had split. We knew the type of people that were trying to move the parliamentary policy who went into the officials. We listened to all this old thing about a right left thing. The right thing was because of some people in the developing Republican provisional movement at the time. They used that development to highlight some of their own hang-ups, and they brought religion and all that into it, and they started talking about people with the officials and all the rest of it, that they were devil's advocates, like, and all that kind of stuff. It was terrible altogether, and we couldn't become involved with that. Honestly, like, it was wrong, like, you know. But in time they shed that from their movement, like, you know. But there were people who they took advantage. It was a fraught time, and they were able to do that, like, you know. But I mean, I knew people. We had studied Marxism and matters of that nature for quite a while, and I knew a pile of people, and they were good at putting Guevara up on their wall at home, and they were good at shouting slogans. And of course, the Starry Club became very much very popular, like, you know. But it was a tactic to a great extent. There were the times.
So did Saor Éire then, did you gradually drift towards, or did you end up joining the Irish Communist Organisation?
We joined the Irish Communist Organisation. We were in it for 11 months, I'd say. We'd spent a good bit of time in it in the beginning, putting our act together, as they'd say, reading up on their publications, and they were supplying some back stuff and all the rest of it. We were reading up on it, and we were quite impressed by, as I said, some of the things that were there. Until I think it was about September, October, there was a guy then wrote an article in the Irish Communist, and it was a bloody well outspoken attack on the IRA. He went on to accuse him of being responsible for the pogroms in the 1930s above in the north and all that kind of stuff. And I got very annoyed about it. And I went away and I sat down and I wrote a response to it. It's on the Saor Lounge. This fellow Lynch, I took him up on it. But you know, he got his into the paper, ICO paper. They refused to publish mine. There you are. You know, oh, they, of course, you'd be told they reserved their rights to do this and everything else, like, but I was given the other side of it. And then, what in the beginning started off within the party as a tendency that of the two communities to move towards nationality and all the rest of it, was only that, a tendency. They didn't go any further. And we kind of said, yeah, they're not very united and haven't been for years, like. Of course, they were brought in like as colonists at the early stages, like from England and things like that. But we weren't kind of perturbed about it at that stage. We didn't see it going anymore. We went in to join, to form an Irish 32-county Communist Party, and there seemed to be doubts then developing too amongst some of the people whether we should be in a 32-county situation or British and Irish and all the rest of it. And we eventually, a big thing, and there's no point in I going into it because that is there too with Saor Lounge going. there's no point in going into that. But we eventually, we left them, like, you know.
And is that where they became the group, the Cork Communist Organisation? Is that what happened?
Yeah. We were with that then for a while, and some of the people went back. I think there were 2, 3 people went back into the ICO. Maybe 4.
Because some of the Saor Éire in Dublin, Saor Éire Action Group, they ended up with the Irish Communist Organisation, or as it became British and Irish.
That would have been the BNICO.
Later.
There was Connolly ended up with them.
Yeah.
And there was another lad there too. He ended up with Connolly with them as well at a later stage.
Was that O'Donnell? Was it right?
I think so. Yeah. What's his first name?
Can't think.
You're like myself. We can't remember all the names. But you know, there was that toing and froing. But we had to get on with it anyway, like, you know. And we had the Cork Communist thing. And then out of that, we formed the Cork Workers Club.
Yeah.
And once we got the Cork Workers Club going, we renewed some of the printing we had been doing. I should say like that we had done the People's Voice, basically the same people. Sorry, we had been doing the Revolutionary Forces, IRF, the An Phoblacht. Then we were doing the People's Voice under Saor Éire. And then we done a small little notes kind of thing, you know, the short notes thing. We done that as Cork Worker, the Cork Workers Club, I think it was at the time, maybe it was the CCO, you know.
But the Cork Workers Club, you had a bookshop.
Oh, we had a bookshop.
Which was well known years ago.
Yeah, we had a bookshop, yeah. And
did that was that an important centre in Cork at that time for people on the left?
oh, it was. But the thing about it was up in a lane where it was really a back street, like, you know. And we used to get in papers from Belfast and places like that. At that time there was a pile of crowds in Belfast with what they call microscopic presses, you know. They were putting in stuff. PDs would be doing stuff.
Because I know you had meetings and people like Ian McCann and people like that.
Ian McCann spoke down there.
Yeah.
We brought him down. Like, he was a person who was speaking at that time for civil rights for people up there, and he was involved actively in the whole thing.
Bernadette.
Yeah, we had him down. He spoke. We had people in from Scotland spoke as well, from the Scottish Workers Movement, the Scottish Party, Workers Party or something like that. And we had a representative of that crowd in Angola, a fellow called Sangumba. Actually, he came down to us, the internationalists, and they had brought him into the country, and they asked us were we interested in having him. We used to have public meetings and things.
You know, when you started publishing the historical reprints of socialist classics.
Yeah, maybe. But we got deep into that then, publishing those. I had the job of series editor. We used to do things. We used to photocopy the originals, you know, but where they came off of dirty old copies and things like that, we had to get them typeset.
And where did you manage to get the originals? Did you get them from people like George Gilmore and people that were still alive? I mean, they were hard to guess, surely.
Well,
they all had then.
We had friends who were interested in books and things, and we got loans of stuff and all the rest of it. Sure, look, that's an early copy of we put out of James Connolly and Irish Freedom. That was #1, and
What year would that have been published? Be 1971 or 72?
Oh, we published it in 74.
Okay, yeah.
And it was first published in Chicago in 1926.
Yeah.
And actually the introduction is by T.J. O'Flaherty. That's brother of the O'Flaherty, the author. He wrote the introduction to that in December 1926. That's how we published that. But as time went on, then we got that typeset and we reprinted it in a more saleable size, like, you know. The Republican Congress we put up, that was the original Republican Congress that was written years ago in 1935. It was by George Gilmore,
Yeah.
and it was published by the United Irish Republican Committees of US. It was published in the Bronx in 1935. Now, we had that out at an early stage, and I can go on to it there. Later we went on and got out the copy of Gilmore's other book, like, you know. His I have it here somewhere. I don't know where I put it. Oh yeah. When we got that, we're getting that out, we got it out in this size, right? And that was again based on the 1935 one. But in later times, we got out the one that was done by Gilmore in the 60s. And I remember going up to his house and sitting down, we had a talk about it, and he agreed that we could publish it, but he wanted to add in a fresh introduction. So we said go ahead, and he'd done that for us, and we came up with a new copy of it with a George Gilmore introduction.
Oh, that's fantastic, yeah.
He updated it at the time. But
And so his politics still the same? Did he remain left-wing? He didn't change, did he?
well, he was left-wing, all right. But I mean, like a lot of fellas, I suppose, in old age too, he wouldn't have been saying he was backing any particular grouping or party, like, you know what I mean? I had long talks with him at the time. As I said, I went out to his house and things, and he used to write letters to me and things like that. Do you know, I remember a time when I was chairperson I think I was chairperson at the time of the IRSP, and I had a letter in the Times, Irish Times, and the next thing, I'm sure it was when I went up there or later, he might have written a letter to me. Thought the letter was great. There was no mention like of IRSP, he wasn't into the business of criticising at all. We just exchanged views, like, and that was it, like. He liked the way I spoke about matters, and we got on all right, like, you know.
So somebody was carrying on his ideals, really?
Oh, he was delighted with it, because every now and then I gave him a number of copies without charge, but after that then he started sending me down money looking for more copies, and to be honest with you, I sent it back. I was going to get another edition of it published or something. He sent me down money too, and I sent it back. Sure, I'd say he was in no position to be doing those things. But we were delighted that he gave us permission, you know. But we went on publishing then.
And what about people like Pat O'Donnell? Would you have met people like him at that time?
Well, I met him all right, but I didn't meet him in connection with
Because he
writing
wrote
any
books rather
or
than
anything.
pamphlets, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't. But like just to hop on there for a while and go through these books, I won't keep you all day, no. But the British imperialism in Ireland, that was published originally by Workers' Books in March 1931 in Dublin. That woman, Eleanor Burns, who wrote it, was very much a great anti-imperialist. Like, she wrote on places like China, Egypt, West Africa, and all the rest of it, like, you know, these things. And
can you hold it up to the camera? You can see the colour now.
No, I got onto her. Her husband was a prominent member of the Communist Party back in those days, way back into the 30s, like Emil Burns was his name. People who have any knowledge of the CP will know who he was like. But she gave me the okay to publish it, and we corresponded for a good number of years until she died. And every now and then, like, she'd come back to me looking for a couple of copies that she had met people, and she was all the time saying thanks very much for digging it up from the past. But it proved an interesting thing. You see, the thing about all these is we put them out unabridged. What people said in them, we reprint it. Which would bring me, we say, particularly now, to this one. Marx, Engels and Lenin in Ireland. Now, that was written by a man called Ralph Fox. He was an English intellectual. It was published by Modern Books in London in 1932. He was a member of the Communist Party. As I said, he was an intellectual. He wrote other matters as well. But he took time out to write this about Ireland and Marx, Engels and Lenin and their relationships to it. A fine book, nice little book. But of course, being unabridged, we published it that way. But being unabridged and given the time that was in, he had warm feelings towards Mr. Stalin and things like that. And some of the bookshops in England, they'd always take a sample run of your books. We used to find, like some of the bookshops, they'd be under New Era, or, you know, they'd have all different kind of lefty names. Sure, we wouldn't know who they are, but we had a point that we sold the books to everybody. Everybody. We're not going to if they want your books, we're not going to say no or anything. We just sold them to them. But you would notice that some of the crowd that you'll find out afterwards were Trotskyist crowd. They would never be ordering them. So there you are. But I tell you, damn them all, that man went out to Spain and he died fighting out there. He was an intellectual, but he was also a fighter. And when you're with groups up the country there, remembering these people who were Irish and died in Spain, there's a man, he was English, by God, he wrote very good on Marx, Engels and Lenin as it related to Ireland, you know. No problem about publishing it. We published, oh yeah, no, sorry. We published in this other one, the James Connolly songbook. And that was a compilation of like of stuff we got from here, there and everywhere, you know, going through all the different books and finding out, and we got as much as we could, and that always sold well.
And there's you know the way there's the James Connolly songbook, the group that were here, and they made the CDs. Did that come because of that? No, they were from different countries. They were here in the last year.
Oh yeah, they
Yeah.
were, but they
appeared
wrote,
in Liberty
they
Hall in
wrote to
Dublin.
me. They
Yeah.
wrote to me when they were in the business of coming up with that book, you know, and they were aware of this book. They had picked it up somewhere or other, and it kind of triggered them to do something, and more so like when they realised that there was so many things mentioned down through the years of Connolly songs and all the rest of it, you know. You know, one of the songs that Connolly was involved singing, and when he was in America as well and all those places, was the red flag. Of course the Labour Party stole that, and that was written by a man by the name of Jim Connolly, who was an Irishman.
Yeah, from Meath, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, he was from up the country.
Yeah.
But there was a kind of a thing in this country, ooh, you wouldn't sing that. From Moscow's halls, the songs were sung and all that kind of stuff. But it was even, that was written even before the Russian Revolution, you know. Things were bad out there then as well. But there's some nice little pieces in it. Yeah, they brought it up to date, and they recognised this book in it, like this little booklet in it, that it played its part. Let me see. The other book, of course, like number 4, there was the Irish Republican Congress, as I said to you earlier. Like,
Yeah.
we got the okay from Gilmore for that. There's the Irish Question. That was by a man. He was somebody that Connolly taught quite a lot of. John Leslie. He was in the British Socialist Democratic Federation. He published their book, their paper called the Justice and things. We've done that. Now we published this one as well. The basis of socialism in Ireland. Now,
Thomas Brady.
when we were organised at Saor Éire in 1969, apart altogether from the previous stuff we had when we were IRF, and then the Saor Éire came along, we also in '69 published this as a booklet. It was written by a man called Thomas Brady, who was a Dubliner. He was in the Irish socialist movement in Dublin in those years. There's a well-known photograph there. It's taken, I think, in Phoenix Park or somewhere.
Oh, with James Connolly.
With James Connolly, all the socialists, and you'll find that Thomas Brady was in that photograph.
Okay.
You know, but we saw that, and at the time we also republished in '69 Workshop Talks by James Connolly. So like we were kind of into the
And I see here these bigger ones. Are they earlier ones? You see that over here?
Oh yeah. I meant to say that, yeah. But
they're larger magazines. Well, it's in size.
well, sometime after we had left the ICO, and we had formed together as the Cork Workers Club, I started out to chronologically list Connolly's writings on Ulster and partition, because it had become the big thing at the time, if you can understand, in the early 70s. And I used the name out of one article that he done, and the booklet was called Ireland Upon the Dissecting Table. Mary.
That's it.
Yeah. There.
Yeah, I've seen that. You must have done that again as a smaller booklet.
Oh, we done it
Yes,
smaller.
that's right,
It morphed like into those sizes.
Yeah,
You know, we done it, and there's an introduction in it as well. That's about the longest introduction. We never set out to be doing long introductions, but you see, that was there before, as a pamphlet in itself, before we done the series.
Yeah.
And then we later, you see, entered it into the series as number 11.
If you had to republish some of these books, could they be lost permanently?
Pardon?
You know, if you had to republish some of these books, could they be lost permanently?
I suppose they could.
You know, with time, you know.
I don't know. But, I don't know.
Because stuff like from the Republican Congress, there mightn't have been that much of it. I mean, it was already old by the 1960s, 70s. And if you hadn't republished them, there were so few of them really, and would, you know, could have been lost.
There's another one now that we published, the Connolly Walker controversy.
He's a Scottish fellow, wasn't
The ICO had published that as well.
he? Oh, right, yeah.
The thing. Yeah, like there was a lot of stuff.
Was Walker Scottish? Was he the head of the Socialist Party in
No,
Scotland?
no, he was from Belfast.
Oh, right, okay.
He was Connolly referred to him as a waterworks or a gasworks socialist,
Yeah.
dealing with all those little matters, like, you know. There you are. That was another one. Then we published, that's out of print for years, The Story of Irish Labour by J.M. MacDonald. Interesting little piece, little thing. That was first published in 1921. Oh yes, this is what, let me put it to you like that. That is what that became,
Oh, yeah.
right? And you know something? If I remember now, we couldn't get stuff done in Cork at the time, the typesetting. And I think, I know we got several done, but I think this was the first one. We got this typeset in Cornwall.
Oh, right.
The prices were okay, and the service were good. And they had no problem with it. Money is money, like, you know. We then went out, this is convict number 54945. It's on Jim Larkin. It's a little, there's a few articles in it, like, by Jim Larkin. And that Larkin's early life, there's something by W.P. Ryan. Yeah, there's a few interesting pieces in it, like. And there's an article done by a comrade of his at the time, Jack Carney, you know. This is another one. Then I dug out somewhere. I got a hold of a copy. Yeah, we would have typeset that again as well. It's called Irish Labour and its International Relations. And it's based on a Congress, the Irish Trade Union Congress, that they attended, connected with the Second International, you know, and I'm sure I've done a small piece there to introduce it, you know, but that's out of print a long time too. That was only just a small little thing. It was first published in 1917 by someone, Ronald, he called himself, as a pseudonym. Freedom's Road for Irish Workers. And then I kind of had wanting to do that for a long time. I eventually got it out. The Connolly Delone controversy on wages, marriage and the church. It's Connolly's comments, and that's Delone there. Daniel Delone. Like, he was big in America at that time, where socialism was concerned, you know. And
Was that written when Connolly was in America?
oh yeah, well yes, it would be an exchange when he was there, right?
So that must be, is that the 1800s, that one?
No, and like Connolly was there around 1910 and those kind of years. But the thing about it is, he was there around 1904.
Yeah, he was there
Now,
very
all
early.
those kind of periods, he was there on and off. But the thing, like people don't grasp at all. If Connolly had never been in 16, and if he had never been much in Ireland or anything, when that man went over to America, where the socialist movement was concerned over there, he was big. He was well regarded. He met all these leaders over there of that. He was friends to Beverly Gordon Flynn, you know, and all those kind of people over there, they knew him. He was no pygmy at all, like he was big, like big in the movement over there. That's the Irish crisis. That's the British Communist stand on Irish self-determination, written by a well-known CPer at the time, a fella called William Paul. That's that. Then there's the struggle of the unemployed in Belfast. That's a small little thing, but it was written by Tom Bell, who was another prominent member of the movement over there. But like if he happened to be an Englishman or something like that, and they wrote on Ireland, we published them as well, like, because the subject is Irish, like, you know. That's another one there, the Irish Free State and British imperialism. And that would have come out of the Communist International book of May 1932. All, of course, as I say, without change, unabridged.
But you were very open-minded because they did not have your same views. Like even the guy who was writing, you know,
Sure.
that you synthetic as Stalin.
Listen, I knew a fella, I went up one day, I was up in Belfast. There's always a bit of laugh to some of the things. And when I went up there, the fella above there says to me, Jim Lane and socialism. Oh Jesus, he says, don't be showing that around the lads here at all. And I said, why? What was the name of the fella now? He was in charge of the IRA at the time. Don't open that short to anybody when I'm here. So that was that, like, you know, the way the people react. But I was on the way up to that. There were some friends, comrades from Dublin with us, and we were going up in the lorry. I know he had all the stuff in the back, it was my car we were using. I know he had all the stuff laid out. And we were stopped around Lurgan. We were stopped around Lurgan by a police patrol, or a military patrol. And this soldier came to the back and opened up the back, and I opened up the back, and there was all this stuff here. And it was all laid out, you know. And it was all Cork Workers Club. And Jesus, we thought we were going to be held up in there for ages. But he got on, and someone said, one of the lads said to me, he's on down to Lisburn, that's the centre. We knew where he was at there, but he was there, and he says to us, and he was telling them in the thing, Cork Workers Club. And once he heard that, he must have got the okay, and he says, right lads, off you go. When I got up to Belfast, everybody told me, he thought you were the Workers' Party. They were okay. But there's always something you can smile at. But anyway, we done that book, Sinn Féin and Socialism. And the people one of the articles in that is by James Connolly, another one was with a pseudonym, Charles Russell, and the third person was called Selma Sigerson. Interesting articles, as I say, unabridged. Read them, take them for what they are, and that's it. But the last one then was the Irish Case for Communism. And that's a collection of writings mainly by people in the Communist Party, down through the years. Sean Murray, who was from Antrim, Jim Larkin Jr., who was a member of the party, a fellow called Seamus McKee, and a statement from the Communist Party of Ireland. And it says about building of the Marxist-Leninist Party, 1930 to 35. It was about those times, like, you know. Again, I'm repeating myself, but interesting. The purpose was to give it as it was written. Understand their views. That we done 20 editions altogether, you know, and we reprinted them and reprinted them, and they kept going from about 1974, I'd say, up to 1990. The last of them that we printed was in 1990, I'd say. Oh, that's 25 years ago, isn't it? 25 years ago.
And does anyone...
I still have some of them, because, to use that awful expression, I lost my arse on it. I put a lot of money into getting these copies printed with this finish, and there was a coincidence of problems. Worldwide things started where the socialist movement was concerned, and whether you were a supporter of the Communist Party or you were an opponent, you suffered. A lot of these organisations fell to the side, and all over Europe it was much the same. Some of the Communist parties became workers' parties, it sounded softer, and all that kind of stuff. But the changes did come. On top of that, then, to make it a little bit more awkward, our printer died. He died sudden, I think it was 1990. He had been involved with us in Irish Revolutionary Forces and Saor Éire, Sean Daly. Now, Sean himself wrote 2 books in the 80s, I think it was, or no, the 70s. One was on the First International.
So have you one last word before we finish up today, Jim?
Do you know, when it's all finished now, I'm going to say, Jesus, I forgot this. Something like that, you know. However, I'll be thinking on it.
Thank you very much, Jim Lane.
Rise up the starry plough in James Connolly's name. Rise up the starry plough for his glory and his fame. He joined the Transport Union so workers could be free. He fought for Irish freedom for the likes of you and me. James Connolly came from Scotland, a rebel to the core. He wanted not just freedom, but socialism and more. He said when we gain our freedom from England's cruel hands, we'll have to fight the bankers, we'll have to make a stand. So rise up the starry plough in James Connolly's name. Rise up the starry plough for his glory and his fame. He joined the Transport Union so workers could be free. He fought for Irish freedom for the likes of you and me. He held his line for liberty in the GPO. He held his line for freedom and he would not let it go. Well, the Brits, they bombarded them and they smashed them brick by brick. he held his line for freedom and a socialist republic. So rise up the starry bow in James Connolly's name. Rise up the starry bow for his glory and his fame. He joined the Transport Union so workers could be free. He fought for Irish freedom for the likes of you and me. Connolly is a hero and they shot him in a chair. They took him from the hospital and those who were there, well, they set his lips at fire on that Easter morn as the bullet pierced his heart. An Irish martyr was born. What will his legacy be now in this land of mine, where nothing has a reason and little has a rhyme? We fought the O's in Wexford, we drove out the black and tans. Now we fight the bankers and their greasy hands. So rise up the starry bow in James Connolly's name. Rise up the starry bow for his glory and his fame. He joined the Transport Union so workers could be free. He fought for Irish freedom for the likes of you and me. So rise up the starry bow in James Connolly's name. Rise up the starry bow for his glory and his fame. Rise up the starry bow in James Connolly's name. Rise up the starry bow for his glory and his fame. So rise up the starry bow in James Connolly's name. Rise up the starry bow for his glory and his fame. He joined the Transport Union so workers could be free. He fought for Irish freedom for the likes of you and me. So rise up the starry bow in James Connolly's name. Rise up the starry bow in James Connolly's name.